Welcome to Redacted on this Wednesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And I'm in a good mood. I don't know why, but I'm in a good mood. We got a lot of people here watching us live. Welcome to the show that we hold powerful people to account. We cover the stories you might not see in the mainstream media. I'm looking at the chat. We got tons of Australian viewers today. So hello. And one of our Australian viewers just said, "Good morning, effers." I'm like, yes. Good morning in Australia. Good morning, effers. Good morning, all of you. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's evening where we are, but good morning to the rest of you. We've got a very busy show, don't we?
We have a lot to talk about. That's right. We're going to talk about the fallout from Nancy Pelosi's little vacation that she took. I hope it was relaxing for her. It wasn't for the rest of us. We are also going to talk about why the White House continues to push a treatment for COVID when there are many questions about it. We're going to try and talk about this. We may have to do it in code because you know how YouTube can be. Yeah. If you're watching us on another platform, maybe we can sort of brain signal you the things that we mean.
The uncensored version on Rumble and other places. That's what we have to do here, unfortunately. But yeah, what's going on with Pfizer? Why is the White House continuing to pump billions of dollars to this company when there's so many questions about the efficacy of these vaccines and these prophylactic properties? Well, I'll get into all of that. We're also going to look at Ukraine. Huge update on Ukraine this afternoon, and just actually shortly before the show started, a big update as it relates to Germany and Ukraine pushing for peace talks. We will analyze that piece of it and what Vladimir Putin just said about U.S. involvement in Ukraine. Some pretty eye-opening details we'll get to in just a few moments.
Plus war games with North Korea. Because
that was a good time.
Why not, right? Also, the media protecting Dr. Fauci and information about why you don't like CNN. You could probably tell yourself your own reason, but we're going to talk about it in the aggregate.
Yeah, that's right. And, and Kim Iverson, as it relates to Dr. Fauci, we're big fans of Kim Iverson here on the show. Really respect her as an independent journalist and what just happened to her at the Rising as it relates to Dr. Fauci. All of it comes together in a very interesting story. So we will unpack that and more as Redacted starts right now. Octavio in our chat says, "Hello from Mexico. I love this news show." Well, we love you, Octavio. Nice to have you, and all of you who are here watching us live. You can watch us live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. GMT Time. What time is it in Australia right now? Let us know. Let us know. We got a lot of
Australians. It's the morning for those effers.
For those effers over there. That's right. Yes, and we have a daily newsletter. I want all of you to subscribe to it because it's free and it's fantastic, and you can be informed while you have your cup of coffee in the morning or late at night whenever you're reading it. Just go to redacted.inc. It's totally free to sign up. You can, again, read it in about 5 to 10 minutes over your favorite beverage of choice. We cover about 5 or 6 stories in there. I should mention that it's also a place for us to stay connected because as we've covered stories as it relates to Pfizer and in the war in Ukraine in the past, these big tech companies have loved to censor us in the past, take us down for a week, block us for a week. I mean, this is what happens, right? And this is a way for us. We're not even able to publish anything, right, David? We can't do anything to YouTube. We can't publish a comment. We can't do anything, right? You're muted. David's muted. But what he's saying to all of you is
that the rules are if you get one of these strikes, they punish you by taking down the offending video and making it so that you can't publish or comment or otherwise interact for a cooling off period of 1 to 2 weeks. That's how YouTube works. We have appealed these decisions before, and it to no avail. So right now we are going to play by the rules of engagement, but at the same time, we do want to foster our own community so that if we can no longer play by those rules, we still have a community to discuss.
And can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Yeah, no, all I was saying is you even have a community feed and you can't post there, and you can't even like pin a comment. So if you want to go to a video and pin a comment on those videos to let people know in your most recent videos, they won't even let you do that. Like you can do nothing.
Yeah. So it's like silence. And then people like are posting, they're like, where'd you guys go? And we're like, we can't even type anything to you because we're punished. We're punished.
The
and think about
rule
this.
is that you should only get like 1 minute for however many, like if you're raising kids and you give them a timeout, like a 5-year-old should get 5 minutes and a 10-year-old should get 10 minutes. That's what some doctors say, according to my baby book. So like that is cruel and unusual punishment.
Why are you leaning so far?
Because I'm looking at you.
Well,
okay. Oh, I guess.
And think about this. Like one of the issues with, like, imagine if somebody calls the cops on somebody, they show up at your house. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or what, but the neighbors think all of a sudden that you're guilty because the police were at your house. It's the same thing. Like people that don't know, we were talking about the jab, and then all of a sudden we're down. They're going to be like, oh, they must have been talking about, like, they must be wrong. You know, the information they shared must be lies or misinformation.
Or
and
that we're,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that we're purposely being misleading when really the things that we have been punished for have been reading documents that Pfizer published on their own. Right.
On their own website, their own documents we were covering.
And they didn't like it.
Yeah.
And other things that we will not repeat and get punished right now. So right now we're going to talk about the news. Then
yes, that's right.
Do that.
Before we do that, I want you to all hit that like button. Very, very important because it pushes us further out into the algorithm. We are up against the algorithm beasts that suppress and hide this type of content in favor of mainstream media. So please just smash that like button. It actually, while we are live, it really helps the show. And subscribe because we're here live every day, Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So without further ado, you might be asking yourself, now what? Hey, what in the world is next now that Nancy Pelosi flew into Taiwan for, was it fewer than like 24 hours? I mean, she was there for like...
It was a quickie.
It was a quickie. She turned around. It was like a tantric quickie because it was like Sting level tantric quickie. She spent about 10 hours there or so, maybe a little longer. I don't know.
I'm not following that analogy, but okay.
You don't know the Sting story about tantric? You don't know that story?
How they have hour-long climaxes?
Or just, you know, copulation, not the actual climax itself. I'm sure that's very short.
Yeah, they're trying to prolong the climax.
I don't want to talk about this at all in relationship to Nancy Pelosi. That should not be allowed.
That's maybe the only way. That's the only way it's the only way it's palatable to talk about Nancy Pelosi. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi was there for just a short amount of time, like fewer than 24 hours. Turned around, flew out. But you're probably wondering, like, well, what the hell now, right? She was there. She was escorted by. This number astounds me. She was escorted by at least 8 U.S. warplanes. Okay, 8 U.S. warplanes had to fly her in there, F-15s. The price tag for her visit to Taiwan estimated now at $90 million. We'll get an exact number, but that's the preliminary number. $90 million it cost Nancy Pelosi to fly into Taipei Airport for this like short little trip.
Wow.
What do we get for that? Maybe a start of a new war with China? Is that the goal here?
We absolutely will get sanctions. So our goods will be more expensive, if you can believe that, right? And we will get increased amount of rhetoric about protecting Taiwan now. And we will get the opportunity to send money and lend lease weapons there. That's what we get for it. So you can decide.
Well, and I just want to kind of
think that's a good return on investment for your tax monies.
Yeah.
Well, I want to put it in perspective a bit. So a lot of people don't know this, but like when you have presidential candidates, like when all the like Bush and all those guys that were just running in the elections, they get security. They get what is the security that
Secret Service?
The Secret Service,
right.
And to the tune of about $50,000 a day each candidate. So if you think about that, that's probably like 2 people, I would assume, maybe. So how many people went? Like, was it 2 full planes of people that went with Pelosi on this?
I mean, it was a full United States, Air Force One level aircraft, right? And then a whole contingent of people, right? And then the 8 warplanes, and then all of the surrounding aircraft carriers. There was an aircraft carrier reportedly, and multiple warships that were also engaged in this area to protect her on this visit. So just think about that level of money.
So we're probably only talking about $90 million in regular costs. We're probably not even into the military budget that it costs to go yet.
I think that is the military cost, right? For the warplanes and the
I don't know the
F-15s.
itemized. I don't know the itemized numbers on this. I don't know how it all breaks down. I just think it's astounding. And so when I ask myself, okay, what do we get as Americans, right? If you live in the United States of America and you spent that money from your tax dollars to pay for Nancy Pelosi to go there, maybe to check up on her investments. In
We get
Taiwan
semiconductors.
Taiwan
on, man.
semiconductor plants. Maybe that's what you get. But I know what you get. You get Taiwan is going to be punished in all of this. So this is Shashank Joshi, an economist, who says, Taiwan ultimately is going to be the one who's going to suffer here. Listen.
I think we're going to see a very deliberate and considered effort, a campaign to punish Taiwan for welcoming Pelosi, to signal its isolation from its international partners, and to demonstrate how much has changed since the 30 years have passed since we last had, or 25 years have passed since we last had a crisis of this magnitude.
Now, you mentioned sanctions. We're already seeing that. So sanctions are already about to unfold from China against Taiwan.
Yes, and most likely the United States will then respond in kind and issue its own sanctions. Will it be something that even most American people understand? Who knows? But this will be a two-way fight.
So this is a map. I want to show you this map of China's mainland on the left and Taiwan on the right. Take a look at this. Let's zoom in, though, so you can see something interesting here. These are the Kinmen Islands. I'm going to zoom in as we keep going closer and closer and closer. You'll see here. Let me adjust the map here. And there you go. Those are the Kinmen Islands right there in the center of your screen. These are Taiwanese-controlled islands, and they sit awfully close to China's mainland. Very, very close, in fact. So close, in fact, that Xiamen City, where last night we showed you significant troop movement and tanks lining up for something. Interesting. What are tanks and amphibious assault vehicles doing, lining up in that area? Well, arguably, and military analysts this afternoon that we spoke to saying this is the first target. This arguably would be the first target of invasion. So not mainland Taiwan, the Kinmen Islands, taking over the Kinmen Islands and showing so that way that China's Xi Jinping can show strength.
Yes.
That they're not sitting idly by while this all happened. They vowed fire. They will rain down fire on this. So here you go. This could be the first step in the invasion process. Why amass that many tanks, all of those ships, all of those artillery, and those amphibious assault vehicles right there?
To be fair, you had the most, the largest military and the biggest bullies of the world coming close to your country. So you probably should be prepared, because we're likely to just drop willy-nilly bombs.
Well,
that's what we do.
We've been
that's
there.
our MO.
Of course,
right.
Of course, that's why we've been there. So,
the United States does not have the largest military by way of personnel. We only have the largest military by way of budgetary numbers, spending,
right?
Weapons,
not by people,
but not at all by people.
Yeah.
And in fact, the people that we do have, we don't pay them very well either. So China actually has larger spending per person than we do. But yes, you're right. The United States is, sort of waves. It talks the biggest game. Now, someone in our chat just gave us a $5 super chat. Thank you. And said, well, China lied, basically implying that they bluffed, right? Which is an interesting take on this, because some hours have passed and we haven't seen the explosive fallout just yet. We've only seen sort of news pundits like us saying, whoa, this is serious, and asking major questions. But we just don't know how this will play out beyond sanctions, right? Why this military movement and why sort of draw these battle lines at this point when the United States is already involved in several other conflicts? I think those are pressing questions, even if we're kind of exhaling like, oh, she got out safe. Okay, we made our point.
But let's wait a second. Let's pull back. I want to unpack that a little bit. Thank you for whoever provided that comment in our chat. China never said anything about an attack. And this is very important to remember. If you look at the analysis of this over the past 48 hours, China never specifically said anything that they were going to do. This was Western media pundits and bloggers all bloviating over the past 48, 72 hours. This is going to happen. China's going to do this. They're going to launch a nuclear strike. They're going to do this. China didn't say anything. All they said was they were going to have a strategic ramifications, and we don't know what that means. It could mean 5 days from now. It could mean 10 days from now. So this idea that they bluffed, we haven't seen that yet. And look at look at the video of China mobilizing all throughout China and putting hundreds of tanks in the ready for a possible invasion of the Kinmen Islands and beyond. Like, okay. And by the way, whenever like Western bloggers who don't know what they're talking about are sort of bloviating about this stuff, the only people that really know, it's just like Putin in Ukraine. The only people that really know what's about to happen are like Xi Jinping and his inner circle.
Sure.
Right? Nobody who on CNN knows what they're going to be doing.
Yes, absolutely right. So, I just think it's too early to exhale and say, okay, well, nothing happened. But we also can't, over extrapolate what they will do. We don't know at this point, there is some validity to wanting to validate Taiwan as an independent place. Sure, you can feel that way emotionally, right? But for the speaker to have gone out of her way to take photos and make this photo opportunity where there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of lives at stake. We don't know what is the way to support someone's sovereignty, but this was an extremely dangerous and costly way.
So let's look more at the military side of this before we get to Nancy Pelosi's opinion piece that she wrote in the Washington Post. So here's what here's the latest on this. The U.S. sending 4 more warships to the region at this hour. And Nancy Pelosi's airplane, of course, as we mentioned, was escorted by up to 8 U.S. Air Force warplanes. If you look at the surrounding red blocks on your screen here, these are the areas where China has essentially encircled Taiwan. And then if you take a look at this chart, this is in Chinese, but you'll see they're crossing the line path here, the median path here. This is just the beginning. This is an area where these ships have now crossed over. At least 22 of the aircraft reported having crossed the Taiwan Strait median line. You don't go across that line. And a large group of 27 Chinese planes, according to Tyler Durden this afternoon, breached Taiwan's air defense identification zone. So they're running all sorts of sorties and everything right over these lines that they have not crossed and they don't cross. And then, of course, you have the tanks and everything ready to move into Kinmen Island. So, but Nancy Pelosi had the gall, and she wrote an opinion piece, and clearly it was put together by her team. And it was released just as she was landing, right? You want to go through this?
Yeah. So it's an opinion piece called Why I'm Leading a Congressional Delegation to Taiwan. And she talks about how the United States has had a longstanding relationship with Taiwan and has promised to support them in their independence. Yet she still says our visit in no way breaks up the current status quo of the United States one China policy. It's confounding. She says we need to stand by because we believe that Beijing has intensified tensions with Taiwan and that the People's Republic of China has ramped up patrols of bombers, fighter jets, and surveillance aircraft near or even over Taiwan's air defense, leading the U.S. Defense Department to conclude that China's army is, quote, likely preparing for a contingency to unify Taiwan with the People's Republic of China by force. So she's saying we are worried about conflict there. We do think that they might invade. And so me coming here shows that we won't stand for this and we will come right back if this happens.
Do you buy that? I mean, here's the way I look at it is you going there leads to an invasion. Like, again, it's poking the bear. And to me, this is almost like what they want. They want this to happen.
Yes.
We're going to Taiwan to give them a reason, to give China, whom they pretend to not really love, but they actually do really love them. Just look at the Biden's cozy relationship with China. Again, why are we so quick to send billions of dollars to fight in Ukraine, but we cozy up to China? Again, this is exactly what happened. So in my mind, I'm throwing this out there as a conspiracy theory, because you have to ask yourself, why would you go there? Under what reason would you go there? How does it benefit America at all?
And I really can't follow the logic, right? Our visit in no way contradicts the longstanding one China policy. Like, we still believe they don't exist, but we will defend them if they do exist.
Right. We've already been sending them weapons. Like, we've already been sending them billions of weapons. We've been training them. And if they were invaded, we would never be able to. First of all, Taiwan would not be able to protect itself. Okay. It would be destroyed. And we would not be able to go and affect any kind of big change either. We are not prepared in any kind of way to launch an absolute kind of massive, protection of Taiwan in the South China Sea that far from the United States. It's not going to happen.
I don't know.
We can't do it.
I don't know, man. Didn't you watch the War Games? You know how that played out?
Yeah, the War Games you're referring to was on Meet the Press a few months ago, and Meet the Press did this like NBC game out scenario where they're like, we're going to come back from commercial break and we're going to play a war game to see what would happen if the China actually invades Taiwan. It didn't end well. And it would be mutually assured destruction in the simulation. Yeah. But I thought, so it was interesting, Nancy Pelosi's piece sat on the Washington Post right next to this other opinion piece, literally on the same website. And it said this: the damage from Pelosi's unwise Taiwan visit must be contained. It's like a counterpoint, like sat right next to it, like side by side.
Right. I mean, there were very few in the media in the very least who were saying, this sounds like a great idea. We need to do this. Although it does seem like several Republican senators have said, yeah, we've always said we need to be tough on China. This is a great thing. We're reaching across the aisle. So of all the things that will not get bipartisan support, right, this seems to be something that at least they can agree upon. Is like, is there another war that we can lend lease some weapons, make some money, drum up support and patriotism? We like it. Okay, do it.
Well, just out of curiosity, is she going to go to Palestine next? Is that on her? Is that next on her list of places of marginalized people to go help?
I don't have any idea. I don't know what her itinerary is, but clearly it's not in the United States. While her husband this afternoon was being arraigned for a DUI and pled not guilty this afternoon. So, isn't that kind of weird? Like, she literally leaves the country when her husband is going in front of a judge.
Well, okay, but we could also see that as a very expensive decoy.
Right, I guess.
Right? Nobody look at him over here. Look at me landing in a place that's highly controversial and dangerous for many people that I don't care about.
Maybe we should talk about the Taiwanese people, right? Like, what do they want? Like, we're talking about the United States and why is this good for the United States? But what about the Taiwanese people? Well, of a poll that just came out, conducted by Taiwan's United Daily News website, says that 61% said the trip was not welcome. In a poll of nearly 7,500 readers, the website said 61% said the trip was not welcome, and it may destabilize the Taiwan Strait. Only 38% welcomed the visit. So, and by the way, like, if you saw some of the protest videos, they've been suppressed. You can't really find them. They're hard to find. But there were plenty of people protesting, tearing American flags in half, telling Nancy Pelosi to leave, get out of here. They called her a witch. They told her to get out of this island. You're destabilizing the region. Get out of here. Leave now. They called her all sorts of other names. I just want to say that's not what
witches do.
Okay. But that's what they called her.
Yeah.
They called her Nancy the Witch.
Okay.
They called her Nancy the
Witches
Old Witch.
Float.
No.
Witches float.
This is really offensive to witches. She's not a witch.
She's a witch. She's not a witch. Burn her anyway.
No. No, this is not a witchy move. I'm just saying this.
Good Monty Python references. But nevertheless, how is the United States responding to this? What about warmongers? You know, you mentioned the Republicans were all on board with this. I think we had 25 different Republicans who signed off on her visit. Mitch McConnell among them thought it was a great idea. So it's kind of weird to watch these Republicans because they really want this. They want us to have some massive conflict with China. They love this idea. This is all the focus. Mike Pompeo, liar-in-chief himself, former head of the CIA, former, what was he under?
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State under Trump. I like to think of him as the CIA because that's where he really got his bread and butter. You know, he calls, again, this China bluster. He's like, look, this is ridiculous. China, what did he really do? What did she really do in China? In Taiwan, nothing. Listen to Mike Pompeo.
The challenge from the Chinese Communist Party isn't Republican or Democrat. It's a challenge to the United States of America. When you hear the Chinese response to something, we ought to just take a step back, right? When you hear the Chinese response to the fact that we just had a Speaker of the House travel to a country, all she did was hold some meetings. We didn't land the 82nd Airborne in the western part of China. We didn't launch an attack. We just sent a delegation to another independent sovereign nation. To see this response from the Chinese Communist Party, I think, tells you all you need to know about what America needs to do. And
that's very diminutive.
Yeah,
He's
just like we
telling
only
you
sent
to
troops over
calm
there
yourself.
to liberate. Yeah, we only sent troops and everything over to liberate Iraq. We didn't go over there to, do anything nefarious.
I mean, it's
we're
so
liberating
condescending. It's so condescending, right? I mean, think about it in reverse. Let's just pretend it was Puerto Rico, okay? And now China decides to send a delegation to talk about Puerto Rico's freedom and democracy
Yes.
as a sovereign territory, right? And they land there with 8 warships. Like, what would the United States do in Puerto Rico? Maybe not the best analogy, but it's close. It's, I know you can pick apart like pieces of it and say, well, they're not, but you know what I mean, right? In our own backyard, that close to mainland United States.
Yes.
And this is what.
Well, then the Monroe Doctrine would matter. So that all the stuff that we signed with Russia and everything, that we wouldn't expand NATO and all of that doesn't matter. But if they did that, the Monroe Doctrine, we'd be like, no, we've got documents. It matters when it affects us, but documents don't matter when it affects other people.
Yeah, we have a document from the 1800s under President James Monroe that says nobody from the east can set up shop basically in the Western Hemisphere. It's ours. Like the Western Hemisphere belongs to the United States, right? And China's supposed to adhere to this Monroe Doctrine from the 1800s, something that we wrote up. Like it's our own doctrine. Mm-hmm. Like we have to adhere to
and
that.
I think in Russia it was the Minsk agreements, right? And the Minsk agreements were, that we wouldn't expand NATO and things like that. And we tell me one treaty or anything like that the United States has ever kept. Like we just don't keep our treaties.
No, and this afternoon we should mention that Finland and whatchamacallit are being voted on by the Senate and expected to be signed today to join NATO. Finland, and am I missing Sweden,
is it
right?
the
Finland
Netherlands?
and help me out here, guys. Finland and
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Sweden.
On that one.
It's Sweden.
It is Sweden. Okay, I knew it was a country that started with SWA. I couldn't remember. It's one of those.
Swahili.
There's so many to choose from.
Swaziland, Switzerland, Sweden. I couldn't remember. But at least I thought, okay. So that's the very latest there in China. We're going to continue to watch like the fallout from this. As someone earlier said, China bluffed. Well, we don't know yet. We don't know what their plans are. And it's still just a few hours from whence she left. And by the way, they already launched a cyber attack against the presidential infrastructure in Taiwan. They've already launched a denial of service attack. They're amassing troops and they've already flown over areas that they said they wouldn't under treaties, right? So they've already broken through treaty lines. So are they going to do anything more than that? We shall see.
And when we talk later in the show about Ukraine and the Russian conflict, we will see how the battle lines being drawn make it more important, because it does seem very clear that in this conflict, China has remained neutral, but if we force their hand, they're not going to choose Western side.
Right. So we've got a lot more news to get to here. Please, smash that like button. I saw someone in the chat just said, hey, we have 11,000 people watching, but only 2,000 likes. So let's get it up to like 5,000 likes at least.
Yes, please.
All you got to do is just smash the like button. It's very simple to do. And we've got more news we're going to get to here on the show. We are going to talk about next what is Pfizer hiding? What is the United States and this relationship with Pfizer and the White House? It's very, very interesting. So that we've got that coming up next. We're going to look at why we continue to funnel billions of dollars to Pfizer for things that aren't really working. So I don't know. Maybe you can explain to us in the chat why that's actually happening. We're also going to look at the truth in Ukraine, as President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, just weighed in on that, and possible peace talks that are going to be shot down thanks to Vladimir Zelensky. And we've got more news on that. But first, my fellow Americans, I want to tell you about, if you've got an IRA, you've got a 401k or a savings account, things are scary out there right now. And the Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt just hit a record $30 trillion. Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan cost $90 million yesterday. $90 million. And Americans can't afford rent, can't put food on the table. But that's okay. Nancy Pelosi can go to Taiwan. Inflation at its highest it's been since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the House of Cards comes down. And again, this is probably why the United States is fighting so fiercely right now and looking at China and China hegemony, trying to protect American hegemony and the U.S. dollar. You need to protect your family, though. And that's where Goldco comes in. If you talk to our friends over at Goldco, you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. You need to put your money in actual precious metals, okay? And they are going to give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. And here on your screen, see in the little red line there, it says redactedlikesgold.com. That's the website you need to go to. So redactedlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. Again, my friends at Goldco will give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. Again, redactedlikesgold.com is the place to go.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. Let's talk about COVID, and let's talk about the president's diagnosis and his treatment with the Pfizer drug Paxlovid. Interestingly enough, the president, you may know, tested positive for COVID, said he was doing better, and then tested positive again. This is known as a rebound case. And let's take a look at the president telling us now for the second time that he's better.
I've just tested negative for COVID-19 after isolating for 5 days. Thankfully, I'll
Really?
now be able to return to work in person.
I apologize. This was the first time. It's a Groundhog COVID Day. This was the first time the president tested negative and then went on to test positive just a few days later. So what is up with rebound COVID, and what is something, here's a little pop quiz, what is something that President Biden and Dr. Fauci have in common with their COVID diagnosis? Two things. One, they took the Pfizer drug, Paxlovid, and they had rebound COVID. So this begs the question, why does the White House continue to push Pfizer's Paxlovid when we have this data starting to emerge?
Congresswoman Representative Mary Miller asked that same question. She tweeted this today. She said, Biden received 4 shots of the vax, 2 doses, 2 boosters, and still became so sick he needed 30 pills of emergency use Paxlovid and now has something called rebound. Why are we firing healthy soldiers over this vaccine? That's a good question, right? Like, why are we being told that you need this because it'll protect you from getting sick, and when you're loaded up on this stuff, you get sick? Like, good questions, right? For people who've lost their jobs over
Valid
this.
questions, sure.
Right.
Absolutely valid.
Now, you remember here's a flashback, because I want to unpack this Paxlovid stuff here and why the White House is continuing to funnel billions of dollars to Pfizer. Do you remember, though, in 2021 when Pfizer told us this? This was the report back then, that 1 dose of Pfizer vaccine may protect COVID-19 victims from reinfection, according to this new study. And so Pfizer then, you'll remember Pfizer CEO, they were all on TV talking about this, and they were all over CNBC and Bloomberg. They were all, one of these. All you need.
The head of the
did that
CDC
fall away? Yeah.
The head of the CDC even came out and said it.
Yes. To be fair, though, this was before all the variants started flying about, and they were able to, sort of say, well, these variants, the vaccine was not developed for them. So
was it, though? This was, look at this article. This is August 6th. This is August 6th, 2021. This is less than a year ago.
We started to know about Delta, and excuse me if I'm wrong, but my memory of writing the newsletter is that Delta really came to the forefront in mid-August.
Okay. Let us know in the chat, in the comments. Let's fact check this in real time. Like, when did we first start hearing about Delta? Because I feel like we even started hearing about Delta in 2020. We started as we went towards the Christmas time of 2020. We started hearing about. I'm sorry. Yeah, of like the spring of 2020 into the summer.
Yeah, it says that it was first identified in India in late 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we already knew about these variants, and I feel like we were hearing from these CEOs, no, these vaccines they're going to protect you against these variants too. That's why 1 dose, you should be good to go, no worries here. Maybe now a 2nd dose. Maybe a booster. Then once you get to another booster, and now Paxlovid, and now you got to go on this. And then you get a rebound case. So here is President Biden tweeting this about it, right? Paxlovid, this is after his first diagnosis, right? This is the day after that little press conference we just saw there, before his second rebound. He said, Paxlovid is a game changer in our fight against BA5. Doc prescribed it to me when I was COVID positive. The drug reduces risk of hospitalization and death by about 90%, and you can access these pills for free at tens of thousands of local drugstores around the country. Free? Oh, free. Interesting, right? But of course, we've given them billions of dollars, right? You, the taxpayer, have foot the bill and paid Pfizer billions of dollars. The Biden
and we even paid for the research. We've paid for the research and development. We paid for the launch. We've paid for basically all of it. And so they don't take into, like, they don't have to pay us back for the research. They just get to keep that money, and they get all these billions of profit that they're making over the top of it. And I also want to recommend that people look into what Peter McCullough and Robert Malone have said about Paxlovid, or that drug, because just look that up and listen to what they've said about it.
Yeah. In fact, follow Dr. Malone, or follow Dr. McCullough on Twitter and see what he has to say about it. But here's the American Conservative, which, Pfizer gets big bucks from this. Biden pays big bucks for Pfizer's latest flop. The Biden administration is paying $10.6 billion in taxpayer money for Pfizer's unoriginal and ineffective COVID-19 drug from Paxlovid. So let's go through this piece. The Federalist wrote a really interesting piece today where they kind of dissected this. So let's go through some of the sticking points in this, shall we?
Well, specifically, though, it's around the rate of rebound, which originally we were told is rare, less than 1%, right? These are rebound cases with Paxlovid as a treatment, right? So originally we were told, no, it's about 1%. Then we were told it's 5.4%. And then 10%. And then just last week on CNN, medical analyst and professor at George Washington University said that the newest strain of COVID has a 20 to 40% or even higher risk of rebound when coupled with this drug, right? And so, okay, those are important data points. That means that the efficacy of this treatment is lower, to the tune of maybe even 60%, right? And of course, you would think, well, Paxlovid is usually only given to people who are high risk or elderly, which the president is, right? So it doesn't take a genius to know that 2 cases of COVID is bad for someone who's at risk, especially someone whose immune system is compromised because they have just fought off a virus. And then now they have to take it again, right? So we need answers to these questions.
And so the Federalist asked this question, if you want to take my laptop here, Philip. If Paxlovid causes more COVID, why has the White House spent billions on it? That's a good question, right? So if we go through and we look at why have they continued to spend billions on it, and asking specifically, why make high-risk patients sick twice? As Natalie was just saying, rebound COVID post-Paxlovid raises a critical public health and drug safety concern. According to the National Institutes of Health, only high-risk populations are supposed to get Paxlovid. But taking Paxlovid sometimes opened up those same high-risk patients to rebound infection. So again... people with actual data simulations need to run the calculation of, is it more dangerous to give these people this treatment with a risk of a rebound than letting them fight it off naturally, knowing that the current variant normally shows mild symptoms, right? These are important questions to run simulations on. Right.
Well, then also you need to look at the drug that we cannot say on this channel. John Campbell, who is another YouTuber that you should follow on this, compared Paxlovid with that drug and found that other drug to be far superior to this, but yet, because, well, I don't even want to get into that, but
he actually compares the molecular composition. He draws the molecular structure, and he shows you that it is almost identical, Paxlovid, to the drug that we call people crazy for mentioning, because it also is used in farming. And so, okay. I think it's interesting to also look at some of the other drugs on the market and how they are, in fact, being pulled off for their efficacy. If we can pull up this screen about Regeneron, I'm sorry to skip ahead. But just today, the antibody treatment that President Trump took when he was diagnosed with COVID, called Regeneron, was taken off the market, and they stopped their 4 clinical trials because the data suggests that its efficacy had waned in the face of the surging Omicron variant. So if you take a look at this, according to this report, the company terminated the trials, which ranged from early to late stage because of emerging SARS-CoV-2 variants impacting susceptibility to study the drug. Recent updates on clinical trials.gov.state. So who does that leave now, right? So with Regeneron, which again, at one point we thought, oh, maybe this is our key to treating patients with COVID. It seemed to work fine for President Trump. What's happening here? So who's left? Well, in terms of COVID therapeutics still on the market, it's Pfizer with Paxlovid. And that's about it. There is still a Merck pill called Lagevrio.
Yeah, if you go to the CDC's website, you can see the 2 that are like generally mentioned for this as a prescription. But, for the vaccine. Go ahead, David.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that, and the reason that is, and this is pretty common knowledge by now, but if there is another drug that can take care of COVID, like it can get rid of it, they can't have that on the market to get emergency authorization to use. So the reason there cannot be another drug that they say, oh yeah, this could help or this could help, is because all of these drugs have been released with emergency authorization, meaning they didn't have to be fully approved to be in the market. So none of these drugs are fully approved. They've just got emergency authorization. And so these others fall off because of that, because they cannot have that with another drug that does anything positive.
And that perhaps is the biggest part of this story. I mean, the money piece that we're funneling to them is one thing, but this emergency use authorization stuff where we're skipping trials. And in fact, I'll put this up on the screen here on the Federalist.com if you want to take my screen here. The White House foolishly chose to pay Pfizer $10 billion for Paxlovid based on a highly preliminary pilot study showing nearly 90% effectiveness, which later dissolved into its study and failing and being voluntarily discontinued by Pfizer prior to its completion. Paxlovid failed its trial endpoints when compared to the placebo group. So if you took the placebo, you did better.
Yes.
Perhaps the Biden White House didn't realize that the informal preliminary pilot studies and results need confirmation with a formal clinical trial. Regardless, the White House did not wait until the formal trial was complete before handing out $10 billion of taxpayer money to run right down the drain at Pfizer.
Well, and this was the case with the first variations as well, the jabs. The problem was that they tried to hide that. They literally tried to hide those documents for 75 years that pointed that out, just so that they could get the emergency authorization. So, if they do nefarious things like that, what leads us to believe